Orioles did sweep the Rays and had a hell of a week so far. 5 out of their last 6 have been in the win column. Let's talk about with the man who did call last night's game for FS1. He is the former big leaguer, the Sween Dog himself. Mark Sweeney is back with us now here on the program. Mark, it's Glenn. It's always great to chat with you, man. Thank you so much for taking the time for us.
No, I appreciate it, Glenn. Thank you for having me on. The Orioles looking the better version of when I last had them early in the season against the Royals.
Yeah, obviously. It's a very different conversation than we were having the last time based on how this last week has gone. Mark, I guess with that in mind, right, it's always a bit difficult because the question that we're asking in this city this week is, are the Orioles back? And the answer, of course, is we don't know. This is still just 1 week of baseball. Even bad teams have good weeks of baseball. But what do you make of what you've seen in preparing for last night's game, obviously, and how good the offense looked last night, as far as whether this is more likely what we can expect from the Orioles than maybe as poor as they were playing before last week?
Yeah, Glenn, I think there's a couple factors. You're not relevant, in my opinion, and we made a point of how bad the American League has been. Obviously, you got the Yankees, you got the Rays that separate themselves a little bit. It was a really good test because the Rays have been playing good baseball. They were on the back end of a long road trip, so you might get them at the right time. I think there's two factors in thinking, are you relevant? You have to get to 500, in my opinion. 500 baseball now makes you relevant, makes you playoff worthy. And then also just playing consistent baseball. I think offensively, the Orioles are getting to where they need to be. They need to be a dangerous offensive team. Last night, they looked the part. They jumped on Steven Matz early. And he gave them opportunities, and they capitalized on it. They had a great approach last night, in my opinion. They were looking for those mistakes. They were looking in a lot because Steven Matz likes to do that to get to his changeup.
Mm-hmm.
And when he threw the changeup early in counts, he likes to land it, and they didn't let him land it. I thought it was really good. The Orioles have an offense that can be very dangerous. The middle of the order bats showed up last night. Gunnar Henderson obviously looked the part. The home run in the first at bat, added one in the back half of his game, which was really important. And I thought Adley Rutschman looked good. He looked the part. He was pulling the ball. He looked aggressive, and the whole offense, obviously 16 hits will indicate that. But that's what this team needs. They need to get to 500, even though they're still relevant in the playoff race. But it's way too early to talk that way. They just need to play consistent baseball, and they got it done against the Rays, which I thought was really important.
I think the part about the offense in particular, Mark, is that I think most of us said we believe the Orioles' offense would be better than it had been. To your point, there's too many capable bats in that lineup for them to continue to perform like this all season long. I think the bigger question, and maybe you don't get to answer this because it's Trey Gibson last night, and we don't even know if Trey Gibson's going to make another start for the Orioles, although he looked very good, clearly. But I think the bigger question is, do they have the pitching to sustain this? Because you can sell me on the bats can be better, but the far bigger problem, I think, had been just how porous the starting pitching had been, which has started to turn. Shane Baz has been better. Obviously, Kyle Bradish has been worlds better the last few times out. Do the Orioles have enough starting pitching that they can match the bats and become a legitimate contender?
I don't think they have it yet. They have the complements, and you look at the landscape of baseball. There's not a lot of aces out there. There's not a lot of 1-2s that you fear so much that you can't beat them. And I think it's just baseball in general. Do the Orioles have enough? I would say no right now, but those two, Bradish and Baz, have to be a better version of themselves, and they are. They've become that. I think it's important for you to get a starting five that you feel like you have an opportunity to win every single night. If you are that version of a team in the big leagues, you have an opportunity not only to make it to the playoffs, but you can sustain it and get deeper in the playoffs. That being said, I say no because they still need to try to seek out a number one.
Yeah.
Do they have enough trade value where they can go out there and get a guy like that? I think they do. Obviously, they have the capital to be able to have prospects or guys at the big league level that teams like. So they can do that. Are the Orioles at that point yet? They still have to prove their worth moving forward, going past the All-Star break and understanding that's where we are. We're a better version of how we started, and we've earned that right for our front office to go out there and grab a starting pitcher.
He is Mark Sweeney, Fox Sports. He's with us here on GCR after calling the game last night. Mark, I want to touch on a couple of the bats that you saw last night because Blaze Alexander was under a bit of a microscope when the Orioles traded for him. They traded a helpful bullpen piece from a season ago in Cade Stroud, and a lot of people said, what are they doing? Then Jackson Holliday went down with an injury, said, okay, now maybe we get it. But then he was hitting 133 in the month of April. He's been lighting the world on fire in the month of May, and the immediate argument is you've got to do everything in your power to keep him in the lineup every night, maybe make him your essentially everyday third baseman. I know it doesn't really work like that in baseball anymore, but what are you seeing in Blaze Alexander beyond just someone who had a really good night last night and someone who maybe is earning the opportunity to be in the lineup more frequently?
Yeah, great night last night. I mean, I made a point. He came up and he looked like he wanted to use the opposite part of the field against Steven Matz. So having a plan of attack really turned into a great night because then he started pulling the ball. Obviously, the home run ended his night, triple away from the cycle. This is a utility guy, in my opinion, that can be a guy that plays a lot more because he's earned it. But versatility is huge around the game of baseball, and Blaze Alexander is exactly that. If you turn him into a guy that can play every day or play substantial amount of playing time, that's a win-win. Getting in a new uniform is not easy. You have to show worth. You're feeling like you have to impress so many people, and you see it around the league. And you've seen it with Pete Alonso as well. I mean, a tough start. It just makes it feel uncomfortable until you settle in. And both of these guys look like they're starting to settle in and they're starting to do their job. But Blaze Alexander's a complement piece. And when you have your stars going off, Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman, and you see Pete Alonso getting better, all of a sudden you start getting deeper in your lineup, and that's a good trait. If you're relying on these guys, it's really hard. And I think that's where the Orioles got to a point at the beginning of the year because it was inconsistent offense. So you're looking at a better version. Is it sustainable? Hopefully it is because he is very talented. He's very versatile, and I think that's what you expect out of Blaze Alexander.
On the flip side, obviously Tyler O'Neill had a big hit last night, and that's a good thing to see because there haven't been many of those this season. There has been an argument from a number of Orioles fans and pundits that at some point the Orioles simply needed to cut bait with Tyler O'Neill because his time in Baltimore has been that disastrous. What do you make of that concept that maybe at some point it's just not working and you can't keep throwing him out there and praying that he's going to be something other than what you've seen for now a little bit more than a full season?
Yeah, Glenn, I think we're in that age where if you really struggle, everyone wants to release you. Everyone wants to cut bait and whatever you're talking about. It's very difficult because listen, Tyler O'Neill can't have reverse splits. He has to be really good against left-handers.
Right.
That's what you brought him in for. That's what you brought Pete Alonso in for. You have Taylor Ward. It's getting better against left-handed pitching. So he is part of that, and he has to be a better version of it, and he knows it more than anyone else. But also, if he's not consistently on the field, it makes it very difficult for you to have worth of what he is and how he can be in a batter's box. He needs to stay on the field. Last night was a good, I don't want to call it a first step, but this is what you have to get out of him against lefties. That's where it has to start. And you have to understand that you have to take some time where you got to keep them on the field. So you have to be judicious in the front office and how much playing time you get them and how you go about it. So he has to be a better version of himself, and I think Tyler O'Neill understands that more than anybody. But you can't just say, "Hey, we're gonna release you." This is a guy that signed a 3-year deal, and he has to be better version, and he knows it. So hopefully they get a better version of that, whether it's a time period or not. But that goes along with the offensive production, and he's one of those pieces.
I largely agree with what you said, Mark. And I'll add to it, one of the things that I've been saying for the last few weeks is like I think that this argument is screaming into a void. It's not happening. There's no reason to have it. But my biggest point is, like, what is the alternative? Like, what are you doing it just for the sake of trying to be punitive, just because you think they should be mad that Tyler O'Neill hasn't been good? Because that's not a reason to make a decision like this. But if, you bring up obviously looking to acquire pitching at the deadline, which I don't disagree. I think that is the number one thing that the Orioles should be looking for, is top of the rotation pitching, because they can't compete for anything of relevance without it. But like, if there's the opportunity to add a better, more consistent bat, and you don't have the space available, then I'm happy to have that conversation at that point. But you just don't have that right now. One of the problems has been most of your outfield bats, besides Tavares and obviously Ward taking walks, have been pretty inconsistent this season.
Yeah, and Glenn, you make a good point, because the organization's always looking to get better. It might not feel that way if you're a fan of the Orioles, but they're constantly doing that, and it has to be the right timing. Everyone's looking for right-handed power in the game of baseball. You always hear it. So people might say, well, why don't you just trade Tyler O'Neill and get him somewhere else? Maybe it might help him. That is the truth. But it's not as easy as just going out there and doing pennies to the dollar. I mean, it's not the greatest thing. Tyler O'Neill needs to be better, and he needs to be better in an Orioles uniform. So the mentality is, have conversations, do the right things, get him on point. And is he mentally in the right setting to be a guy that can give us a stretch of games where he's changing the game? He's hitting the ball out of the ballpark. He's playing good defense. This is a guy that has a track record, but it hasn't been good for a long period of time, and he's not the only one. Throughout baseball, everyone on every team has a story like this, that he's not the version that they expected. So hopefully he is, and I'm not trying to make excuses for Tyler O'Neill.
Right.
He has to be better, and he actually knows that. And he goes to the ballpark thinking today's the day. And when it's not, it just snowballs in the wrong direction. And when you're in one of those ruts, it's not a good feeling. Honestly, I can say this too. Playing 14 years, there were times I would have released myself. But you stay on, and you have the ability to go out there and perform and do your job and have that moment that the Orioles need. When you're losing and you're below 500, there's always excuses on that. And I think a lot of the fans like to release guys quicker than I think the front office says, because listen, money has a lot to do with it. The contract has a lot to do with it, how much playing time you have. But you still have to have a better version of him, and that's what they're looking forward to.
Unrelated to the Orioles specifically, but I was wondering, Mark, you've now been watching for a couple of months. We have so accepted that little thing they're showing us on the screen is legitimately the strike zone. And when we go to ABS and when someone challenges and it just nicks the zone, and we just say, okay, that's fact. Have you seen enough to say, hey, it's time? Like, this works. Let's just let it call the balls and the strikes, because I'm kind of openly getting frustrated by the strategy part of it. Hey, this was a terrible challenge, and what was this guy doing? He was just emotional because he struck out and he didn't like it. Or this guy doesn't feel like he can challenge, or you can never challenge even a pitch that you're confident it's the situation says you don't challenge in that spot. I think that a lot of people talked about how cool that was, but I just keep coming back to, or we just get the damn balls and strikes right. Like, where are you with having seen it now and whether it should expand moving forward?
Yeah, Glenn, the emotional challenge is what sticks out to me now because I think they're getting a little more used to it. I think they are identifying certain players, and obviously the catcher's challenges are more important. It's over 50% that they change. I think the hitters are emotional, and also it has to be a high leverage situation. So my opinion is it's still evolving. I like it because I look at it at the end of the game, and that is the most important part. Extra innings, end of the game. But you saw a pitch the other day in a game that ended the game. It was a really good pitch, caught a lot of the strike zone, and then the hitter is just tapping his helmet just because they had a challenge. This is just the stuff that holds me back from saying I love it. But I think pitches change a lot of elements of the game. High leverage situations, I really do enjoy it because there's some umpires that have bad days too, and they're getting challenged constantly, and that affects the strike zone. I think it has enhanced the time of the game because I think a lot of hitters are taking more than they're going out there and trying to swing. They're trying to be aggressive. You're seeing a passive approach because borderline pitches are not being called as much, and you can see it. I think the umpires are better, but also I think the strike zone has shrunk, and that's just the eye test for me. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think that's the eye test. When you see game after game, there's a lot more takes, and establishing their own strike zone that's very important. And I think it's just slowing the game down, which is a scary aspect for me in the game of baseball.
Mark, when we seeing you next?
Well, I'm still with the St. Louis Cardinals, so right. I do the majority of that. So FS1 happens sporadically, but I love doing what I'm doing. I really do. I think it's great. The game is still flourishing. I'd like to see the American League get a little bit better version of themselves, because that's usually the case, and it starts with the AL East. It really does. And I think there's really good teams that haven't played, including the Orioles, played to their best version of themselves, and they go against the Toronto Blue Jays, which I think is another team that's in the same boat.
Kind of wild that the teams that everybody's panicking about it in the NL Central would be in prime position if they were just in the American League right now. They would all be in great shape.
Exactly.
Mark, always appreciate it, man. Thanks for spending the time with us. Let's talk again real soon, all right?
Sounds good, Glenn. Thanks for having me on, bud.